Vandy racked up a bunch of awards, but stepped into this matchup with Kentucky as 13.5-point underdogs.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. So visit FanDuel.com to get started. Now that I've safely returned home from Florida, I was on a vacation and it got cut short thanks to Milton. I was able to make it back home, thankfully, safely. And here I am. Today we're going to examine how Vandy has a shot to turn some heads in recruiting possibly. Kentucky will have a tough time against Vandy's defense, but Vandy will also need a plan against Kentucky's Twin Mountains in the middle from an offensive perspective. But Vandy does come into this week with an armload of awards and open as 13.5-point underdogs. So in the aftermath of beating Alabama, Vandy's getting a lot of attention these days. Vandy's getting, they're getting love from just about every angle, just about everywhere. Everyone is showing Vandy their proper due, and rightfully so. They were able to come in and upset the college football world by upsetting Alabama. So they were the SEC's team of the week, obviously. And Diego Pavia headlined the awards by winning the SEC Player of the Week as well. He won the Maxwell Player of the Week, and Vanderbilt offensive lineman Gunnar Hansen took home SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week. Vanderbilt kicker Brock Taylor won SEC Special Teams Player of the Week. And defensive end Miles Caper won SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. So, and that was because of the sack fumble of Jalen Milroe that actually swung the momentum finally in Vandy's favor. That netted them a win in this game. So lots of awards, and this is something that is new to the SEC world because Vandy has never really ever accomplished these things. And it's good to see. It's really good to see that this whole blueprint, everything is coming together. But the college, the betting world, the Las Vegas has determined that despite all of this, Vandy's going to open up as 13.5-point underdogs against Kentucky, which to me, I think it's getting harder and harder just to assume that Vanderbilt's always going to be a double-digit underdog. I get it. They're playing on the road. They're playing at the grocery bag. But they're proving week in and week out that, they were double-digit underdogs against Missouri. They take them into double overtime, can't quite finish the game on the road. They're not 4 touchdowns, but they are 4-score underdogs against Alabama, 24.5 points, and they end up winning. And honestly, it could have been worse, but they're showing that they deserve this. And I know the Georgia State loss is looming in everybody's mind, but as of right now, that's the outlier game. They beat Virginia Tech. They slaughter Alcorn State, which Vandy doesn't normally slaughter those type teams. It's normally like the scores look a lot worse than the game actually was, but Vandy slaughtered them from the start. Georgia State, I think, was a fluke, and Missouri was just Vandy not knowing how to put a team away. They had Missouri on the ropes, and they just couldn't quite finish it. And then, of course, Bama, they're like, okay, we're going to finish this one because this would be historic. And they finished off the goalpost as well by taking it to the Cumberland, which was really exciting, which was really funny too. And they've since pulled it. The fire department has since retrieved the goalpost from the river and are going to cut it up as keepsakes for people. So another positive from this week is Diego Pavia's jersey sales are going to go way up, which is going to boost his NIL numbers. It's going to boost attention around the program. And with wins like this, honestly, and I didn't get to this, I would have talked a little bit about this on yesterday's episode or today's episode, really. But I was traveling and didn't record. I pretty much drove for 24 hours straight essentially. So I didn't get a chance to record. So I'm kind of a day off this week. But Pavia, his impact on the program is tremendous. But we'll talk. I have Kurt Page coming on later, and we'll talk more about what Diego Pavia actually means to this program and why his jersey sales going up is a big deal, and how Clark Lee's blueprint is finally coming together and all that good stuff. We'll talk about that with Kurt Page. I have him lined up, barring any sort of coaching assignments or something happening between now and Thursday's episode. So stay tuned for that. But Vandy opening up his 13.5-point underdogs. It seems like it's the right thing to do because it's Vandy and they're always just kind of double-digit underdogs to everybody. But this is a different Vandy team, and I like Kentucky. I think they're good. They had a really good game plan against Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a really weird offensive game plan against them, but I still don't quite trust them moving the ball. They had to rely on fluke plays to get them down the field and to get points on the board, and they didn't exactly light the world up offensively against Ole Miss. And then I just option football is a tough thing to deal with. It proved it against Missouri, proved it against Alabama, proved it against Virginia Tech. Essentially sleptwalked the first three quarters, but eventually proved it to Georgia State. Just couldn't hold on to the lead. And like I said, that was just kind of a weird, bad, just nobody wanted to be there type game. But it just everything was ugly. But for the most part, nobody's been able to handle their option attack, and I think we're looking for a name for their option attack. I would love to have a clever name to it, but right now the Aggie Door option, man, seems to be the front runner in my mind because it's the Vandy State Aggie Doors. But they, I just don't like the spread because they should have a little more respect. After the last two games they've played top 10 teams and almost went 2-0 against those top two teams. As supposedly they're supposed to be the worst team in the SEC, the SEC bottom feeders, and they're up here slugfesting with Missouri, which that Missouri loss made that double overtime game not look quite as good. But I still think Missouri's a great team. I think A&M just caught lightning in a bottle. They're starting to figure things out, and they were at home and they got a little bit of momentum going. And playing on the road in the SEC is a tough thing to do, man. And that game proves it as well. So, but they were top 10 in the country at the time, took them to double overtime. They score 40 on Bama and beat them, finish off the game, hold the ball for 42 minutes. But it just, I think there should be I think it should be a little closer given the matchups, but it is what it is. I think it's, I think I'm giving away my pick a little bit here when I say that that it seems like this is an easy cover for Vandy, if not a win. But, offensively, they've got to have a really good game plan as they do. Kentucky's strongest suit by far of their team is the defense. Their defense really gets after you, and they have to prepare hard for that. They play fast, physical. They play with an identity, and they have these big twin mountains in the middle that they really have to plan for. And this is gonna, these two guys have been giving everybody problems, and it's the reason why Georgia had trouble running the ball and had trouble getting in a rhythm in the passing game, because Deion Walker and Keyshawn Silver. I call them the Twin Mountains because that's what they are. Walker's listed at 6'6", 345, and Keyshawn Silver is listed at 6'4", 336. It's a lot of beef there. That's a lot of beef right there in the middle to take care of in pass protection and their NFL quality, which means they can run. You got it. So they have really good hands, violent hands at the point of attack, and they can push the pocket. They can wreak havoc, and they can destroy any blocking scheme. So Vandy's got to find ways to neutralize those guys. And honestly, what you do against those big dudes is you test their conditioning. Okay. And that, to me, that's the plan. You test their conditioning. You see what they can do. You make them chase you. You turn and you throw those screens out there and you make them run. The tunnel screen is great to make those big defense tackles run because they think they have a chance of making the play, right? You throw some middle screens, make them backtrack in coverage. You your option game is perfect for that. You get a double on one of them, read the other, and run midline, which they're prone to do as well. Just, you can run jet sweep and leave those guys unblocked and let them, run upfield and do all that stuff. But you have to find ways. I think the first thing when you have a defense that's built from the interior out, you have two massive studs in the interior, and everybody kind of plays around that. I think the plan is to test their conditioning. That's got to be number one. And I'll tell you some other things about this defense. We'll talk about Vandy's offense versus the defense and what their plan is next. All right. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guarantee when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. All right, welcome back. We are here on the Locked On Vandy podcast, back from Florida. Man, it was touch and go there. I was vacationing on fall break. That's why I had an alternate set behind me after Vandy upset Bama. I was down at the beach waiting for it to stop raining. It never did, and Hurricane Milton was headed straight for where I was. So we had to hightail it out of there. Drove for 24 straight hours, but glad you're with me. I'm glad I'm with you. And glad I made it back to join you here, among many reasons. But I really do appreciate you everydayers. I appreciate everybody who viewed my content over the last week. Up until this point, you guys make the difference. Truly, just go out there and hit that subscribe button, man. You won't regret it. I promise you, you will not regret it. All right. But I think when you look at how these games are constructed, when you look at how these defenses play and how they're built, you have to see, okay, how are we going to attack these guys? What is the blueprint here? And there's got to be a plan. There's got to be a solid plan, or you're going to run into a situation to where you are just constantly ramming your head against the wall. And one of the things I really like about Tim Beck and Jerry Kill is that they do plan extremely well against teams that can hurt you, especially on the edge. Like they had Alabama out schemed. 42 minutes of possession will back that claim up. But they were able to affect the edge. They were able to get guys guessing. They were able to force guys to play hesitant. And they weren't and Bama wasn't making the plays that they normally make, that they normally fly around and get excited about. Now they did at certain portions of the game, but they never really had those backbreaking series where it just, okay, here's where Bama takes over. Like they never had any of those moments. When Nick Saban was coaching the team, they would have that moment in the second quarter against most teams, and probably at the start of the game against Vandy. Like last year's Alabama team, Vandy would have gone 3 and out, punted, and Bama would have ran it down the field, and it would have been a massive blowout. Nick Saban, just the mindset difference between that team and this year's team is a lot different. But I'm not here to talk about Bama. If you want to hear about Bama and the wardrobe that Coach DeBoer should have won, listen to Locked On Bama. But the point is that if you have a team that's that talented, that struggles with your option attack, I think it's possible to plan for a team that upset Ole Miss, but is not exactly a team that I just don't know what they are yet. I don't know. What are they collectively? I know the identity of the team is that they're defense first, and they just kind of do what they can do offensively. But like, really, what are they? Are they an elite team? Are they a team to be taken seriously? Are they a team that's just, hey, we just played a really good game against Ole Miss, and this is the SEC, and this is how it rolls? Or like what? I still just don't. I don't have a feel for this Kentucky team as of right now, and I think at this point of the season that can be a little troublesome for them. But what I do know is that their defense can hit, they can fly around, and they can cause problems. And those two that I mentioned, Deshaun Silver and Deion Walker can certainly provide a wrench into that. But, as I said before the break, you have to test their conditioning, man. You just have to. And if you can just get the ball moving on the perimeter, force those guys to run laterally, which is something they don't want to do. They want to shove blockers out of the way and make the tackle in the backfield. Well, if you end up in a situation to where you're reading those guys or you're running away from those guys and making them chase you down play after play after play, 6'6", 340 pounds is a lot to sprint in a short amount of time, over and over and over again, right? It's a lot. 6'6", 345, 6'6", 6'4", 340. It's a lot of weight to carry time and again, running, right? Because Diego Pavia is not a guy that's going to sit in the pocket and grow his roots in the pocket and try to scan the field and go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. He's going to, hey, whoa, right? If I get pressure immediately, which those two guys in the middle are prone to do, he's going to take off one way or the other. He's Diego football, and he's going to go make something happen, whether he pulls up and throws it or takes off running. He's going to make something happen. Ask everyone that's played against him. If you haven't watched Diego Pavia, if you Kentucky fans that are new to the show this week, if you haven't watched Diego Pavia play football, it's like Johnny Manziel, but he's more fun and less – I don't know if he's less full of himself, but – I mean, he's earned it regardless, but he's a lot of fun to watch, and he's purely the energy of the team, and that's extremely obvious. But this is a game that they're going to have a good offensive game plan. They've got to put guys in conflict, and they've got to again, if they can control the tempo of the game and force Kentucky into playing their game, their guys will get worn out because I just don't think their offense is going to be able to stay on the field long enough to give their defense a true rest. And I think Vandy's really good at, if they're going to punt, they're at least going to get 2 first downs before they punt. Most of the time, I don't think they have a ton of 3 and outs. I haven't gone and counted their 3 and outs versus their drives with 1 or more first downs, but I don't, in the games that I've watched, which I've watched all of them, but when I've constantly just been thinking about have they gone 3 and out, it just doesn't seem like they go 3 and out all that much. They've punted a ton, which is okay. Punts are fine if you're eating some clock and you're controlling the field position and you can kind of flip the field and make the other team drive the ball. That helps. But they again, their identity is limit to possessions, win time of possession, control the field, control the clock, and they've done a phenomenal job at that. I think there's a couple times where they let Missouri get their explosive plays, probably one too many times, and that was the difference in the game. And plus the kicker had a tough go after halftime, but Brock Taylor, that is, had a rough go after halftime in that game. But again, it's no one particular player's fault. This is a team football game. So if you're blaming Brock Taylor for the Missouri game, get out, because it's not his fault. All right. I mean, he did miss some kicks and that does suck. And, he took responsibility for those, and he obviously improved over the bye week to come into this Bama game ready to kick, because he was brilliant in the Bama game. So he didn't give up there. So that's great resiliency. But, this offense, I think, has just got to be able to navigate and find ways around, because you're not going to be able to run right at those two. You're just not. It's just not going to happen, because those guys are good and they're huge, right? They're monsters and they're good. So thinking you're going to single block those guys, I don't see Vandy's off. I love Vandy's offensive line. I love Chris Klinakis. I love everything this offense is doing. But I just don't think I just think if you get in a game to where you're trying to single block those guys, it ain't going to work out for you too well. Running duo, you do have to run your stretch plays. You do have to do some of your inside run type plays. But I think you have to figure out ways to kind of get their momentum going against them. Maybe run like stretch, things that hit off tackle to kind of see if you can get those guys in a flow, because that stretch play does take advantage of defensive linemen that are over pursuing, because you can cut back against the grain on that. But just finding ways to tire those guys out. If you can tire those guys out any way possible, that's the way to do it. And getting as many double teams on those guys, making them run on screens, things like that, I think will just that'll go a long way in helping at least neutralize those two guys. And when you can neutralize those two guys, you can then focus on, okay, well, now we can really truly put these outside guys in conflict because, hey, we got these guys taken care of, and we're going to be all right. So this Vandy offense will get more in depth with it as we go, but just kind of like the overview of it, like the big shot view of it is that they've got to neutralize those two behemoths in the middle. But again, that's Kentucky's strong suit is defense. Obviously, their offense usually pretty good, but this year's group has left a lot to be desired under new coordinator Sangriello. That's right. That's what it is. Coach Sangriello and his offense ain't off to a blazing start. And I don't know if they have time to figure it out against Vandy, but we'll talk about what that looks like next. What time is it? It's game time. Game Time has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. They filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, right? Imagine this. If you could scroll very easily to find the game or the event that you want. Let's say you want to go to a concert. Gametime Picks, it makes the curation a lot easier. So they also have all-in pricing. You have to turn this on. Okay, I repeat, you have to turn this feature on if you want it to show you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout, right? But that's not even the best part. The best part is the seat view. So you get a panoramic view from your seat. See, I'm even getting excited. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. So you get to see, preview where you're going to sit. Also, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, we are back. Welcome back. Segment number 3, Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen. Make sure you make Chris Gordy and Locked On SEC your second listen. Make sure you check that out after you're done here. After you hit that subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff, man, and subscribe to Locked On SEC. You will not be sorry, I promise you. But Vandy opening up as a 13.5-point underdog. Like, Vandy's proven against the 3 Power 5 teams that they've played, 2 being conference games, that they deserve to not be double-digit underdogs against a team like Kentucky. I know it's on the road. I know Kentucky just took down Ole Miss. I get it. But Vandy is not – I mean, I think this is an 8-point spread. I think Kentucky's still favored just a little bit. But like, if you look at Vandy and Kentucky, like they're the same team almost, except Vandy's a lot better on offense. But if you look at the trajectory of their season, right? Kentucky's embarrassing loss happened at the hands of South Carolina. Vandy's happened at the hands of Georgia State. All right. Kentucky had a massive upset against Ole Miss. Vandy had a massive upset against Alabama. Okay, you still with me? All right. And then Kentucky had a near miss with Georgia. Took Georgia to the wire. Should have won that game several times, but didn't. Couldn't finish. Vandy took Missouri to the wire, who was also ranked in the top 10. They weren't the number 1 team in the country, but they were in the top 10 nonetheless, and Vandy hadn't improved. Vandy's coming off of a loss against Georgia State in this situation. So Vandy should have won that game. See the parallels as far as the way their season's gone? So why aren't they more even? I just don't get that. All right. That's kind of my original point. I don't know if in all the stream of consciousness, and I don't know if it's just the road fog I got going on here, but That's my piece on the 13.5 point underdog thing. I think these two teams are more even than people and even Vegas want to give it credit for. I think it's a 6 to 8 point spread. I still think maybe Kentucky a little bit. I don't know. Like Vandy needs to go out and win this game if they want to prove that, if they want to bring these lines down a little bit. So, but here's the thing. If Kentucky wants to prove that they're 13.5 point favorites, they've got to be able to move the ball, which they have not been able to do. That killed them against South Carolina. They couldn't do jack diddly poo on offense. Again, if they had any semblance of an offense, they would have beaten Georgia probably by 2 touchdowns. Georgia was playing terrible that night, right? They did beat Ole Miss, but they had to have some fluke plays to make it happen, and they really didn't move the ball terribly well against Ole Miss. They have to move the ball. I just think Vandy's defense is built to kind of disrupt. I think Clark Lee is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. And since he's taken over that role, this defense has played extremely well. And this is a defense that doesn't have a ton of depth at key positions. They have guys that make a ton of plays, but guys that they're still, like Miles Capers is still not well known in the conference. I think the coaches in the conference respect him, but he's not well known. He won SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week. He's been crushing quarterbacks. He's been playing well. Like, this defense plays well. Why do they play well? Because they have an identity. They love it. And they have a great coach that game plans, which last year they didn't have that. They were only in one coverage last year. And I think it was like cover 3. Something basic, like some high school Harry type stuff, right? So it's been a remarkable change just in those things before they even step onto the field. Like, they have an identity, they know what they are, and they got a lot of edge to them too, which I love. But it's like for Vandy's defense, this is an opportunity for them to say, we're going to go out and frickin' just blitzkrieg you, overwhelm you. Like, they move, they run, they tackle well. They're susceptible a little bit up the middle. So if Kentucky can get a little bit of a run game sustained in the A gaps, they have a chance to hit some bigger plays in the A gaps, which Bama hit some big plays in the A gaps. Missouri hit all their big runs in the A gaps. But that's if I had to pick a weak point of Vandy's defense, that's where it is. Those right up those gaps right there. I think the linebackers are running side to side a little too much, and they leave the middle of the field probably a little too vulnerable. But this defense really enjoys flying around, just cutting off blocking angles, disrupting blocking schemes, and just creating havoc, right? Just creating confusion, just creating just throwing off the blocking keys to these guys. And they're just like, wait a second, no, wait, like this guy was supposed to be here. Or they and they start doing the after the play, they're like, what? Especially on the pass plays where, like, when Capers made that sack on Jalen Miller, that offensive line was like, and he looked back and he was like, uh-oh. I guarantee you he was running back to the sideline going, I don't want to go see my coach right now because I'm about to get yelled at. Like, that's what Vandy's defense can do to you. And when your offense is not clicking right now, and Coach Sangriello, I don't think he's found the formula yet. He might find it against Vandy. I have no idea. But I don't think he's discovered that Barryon Brown. I don't think he's discovered that he's fast. He should have went to Vandy. Vandy's got to get kids like that. Because he was right down the street from Vanderbilt at Pearl Cone. But, I don't think he's figured out that, hey, if I get the ball to Barrett Brown, he's fast, he can run, right? And I don't think Brock Vandagriff is quite figured out. I don't know if it's the schemes that are holding him back, or if, like, I'd love to hear Kentucky perspective on this, like what the situation with Brock Vandagriff is, because he's got the talent. He can run. I've seen him play. He can run. He can throw. He was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school, and he's developed at Georgia. But I don't know what's happened to him. Like, I don't know. He gets back there, and it just I don't know. It just goes all blank for him. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if Kentucky knows how to fix him. They haven't really fixed him yet. I don't think they know. They like open the hood of a car and they're like, okay, how does this work? They're just kind of figuring it out as they go, it looks like. And they're okay with that because their defense is playing extremely well. So, but if they don't figure out this offense, Vandy's defense is gonna eat, and their offense is gonna make them pay big time because their offense will wear you down. Vandy's offense, Diego Pavia, Diego football, he will wear you down. Bama was gassed from the first series. They were gassed, man, because Vandy was dictating everything. Vandy put them on their heels right away, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. They put them on their heels right away, and they kept them there. They kept them guessing. They kept them on their heels, and that's mental fatigue and physical fatigue all at the same time. So if they can do that to Kentucky, this spread will flip, right? So when you bet this game live, you may at some point get a minus 13.5 next to Vandy's name at some point, if their offense can't move the ball and their defense stays on its heels. But if their defense can dictate some things, might be a little bit different of a story. That's the key for them. I'll let Lance Doss talk about that. But that's all I got. They opened as 13.5 point underdogs. I don't like that. They deserve better than that. So anyway, that's where we're at. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe at Locked On Vandy, at Coach Burton 36. Find us, stay with us, tell a friend, bring your friends, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. It's totally free to do. You don't have to pay me money unless you really want to. If you really want to, I'll give you my Venmo so you can hit me up. But you don't have to. Peace out. Behave yourselves. Anchor down.